come and join us for a passionate discussion instead of waiting on your own at home the results of the election. So welcome. And I believe it's going to be a very interesting conversation because we have today the two sides of the story, the legal side, but also the business side. So it's going to be interesting to hear both.
There are two.
Or maybe several. Without further ado, I will start with Dessislav Dobrev, Desi, who is a senior counsel at the World Bank and a prominent expert on AI. As a professional, as a writer, since you're the author of a book on the topic, as a member of the AI committee, and also as an adjunct professor at McGill on this topic. So we have a lot to share with us today. On the other side, we have Vitaliy Goncharuk, right? I'm not wrong. Who is here to present the very practical aspects, since he's a very successful entrepreneur in the business. He's currently the CEO and founder of 12new.ai, is how you say it. An AI company providing solutions for government clients and other enterprises. He was previously the founder of Augmented Pixel, an autonomous navigation company for drones and robots, acquired by Qualcomm in 2022. He is also an expert on the topic that we are discussing today, and has been advising the Ukrainian government, has been an ad hoc member of committees on AI in the European Union as well. So he is currently, I believe, AI officer at the Harvard Business Club, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, and for giving us your precious time. I will start with the question that everyone would like to know the answer of is. Oh, sure.
I'll stay on this chair.
Sure. So, Desi, will AI take over the world?
Or the legal profession?
Well,
I thought we were talking about the law tonight. No reps and warranties about the world, but I don't know.
No, I'm kidding, but that's really a question that everyone has in mind. But what can you tell us about the impact of AI on the legal profession? What is the status of the situation today?
It's a big question to start with. Let's warm up a little bit. Can you hear me? Yes. Yeah. So AI and the law. I think before we even get there, we just have to recognize, and I know that's obvious, but how far-reaching and wide-ranging AI's impact really is, right? Because it's a general-purpose technology that we haven't had in a long time, but this one is really powerful. It will have huge economic impacts, which are not really discussed, unfortunately, as much as they should be in terms of labor impact, inequalities, imbalances, social impacts. We're talking about social scoring systems, potentially emotional recognition, facial recognition, and political impacts. The information that we consume is micro-targeted based on AI. The things that we read, the synthetic content stuff with deepfakes. It will have, of course, environmental implications. I mean, we're reaching now the point where AI is consuming so much energy as essentially the amounts of what countries of the world are, like Sweden, is consuming. And it's most recently going to your point about the world, and it will take over it. There's a new risk that's been identified. That's a catastrophic risk, right? There's the Jeffrey Huttons of the world who are talking about this stuff. So, and of course, the military applications of this. So there multidimensional applications of this. So we as lawyers now have to think about what does that mean for us. On the one hand, we have to rethink what is our role as professionals given the capacity, right? Because that is a tool that we can use in our profession, and everybody else can use, but we in particular can, because it's natural language processing. We are working with language. So what is the role of the lawyer and how does that going to impact us as professionals and tool? I mean, we're talking about a tool that, for the first time, that we've created a tool that can create tools, right? This is why it's so, the breadth and the depth of it is so impactful, because it can actually create new AIs, right? The AI can create new codes. So the first thing is, what does it mean for us as professionals? And we can discuss that in more depth. And the second thing is, what does it mean for us as from a regulatory standpoint, right? For the law as a domain, in terms of all the implications that we just discussed, right? And even more. So what do we need to do? What is the function of the law in dealing with that, setting some parameters? Because as you said, we can't have it completely unconstrained. So what are the constraints? Now, we see various regulatory approaches. We can talk a little bit more about that in detail as well. This is just to set the stage, but we see various regulatory approaches, right? You have general kind of values and principles approaches that some countries are still kind of grappling with from international organizations. Not mandatory, not binding, but kind of signaling principles. Here's the values, and this is what AI would like to do, but how do we get there? It's a separate question. Then you have risk-based approaches. That's essentially what the EU is trying to do with governing AI, segregating it into low risk, high risk, and prohibited applications. We can talk more about that as well.
Get back to that later, yeah.
And then you have liability-based regulation. You have the question of whether we do amend existing laws or we have new comprehensive laws. So there are a lot of questions so let me stop at this point here, because I just wanted to set the framework. But those are the two main impacts that I see for us as lawyers and I just want to say this is whatever area of the law you are practicing in, and I'm talking, this is the second impact in terms of regulatory governance. There will be some questions about how AI will impact that regulatory domain. For example, if you're doing, employment work, AI is being used in interviewing and hiring workers and setting stages. There's wage discrimination, algorithmic wage discrimination, all kinds of issues. If you're doing criminal law, AI is being used in criminal sentencing. If you're doing copyright law, obviously now the big issue is whether, how generative AI can fit into the IP arena, whether it's an author, so there's every area of the law that we do, contract, it will be impacted. So we just have to bear that in mind. Yeah, we'll dive into all these details.
Litigation.
Absolutely, litigation, yeah.
Discovery.
I was just actually sharing an example of there is a company called Do Not Pay, which essentially is an AI-driven application that appeals tickets, parking tickets, and they wanted to go to court to represent a defendant. And essentially, they wanted the actual application, the AI, to be the representative. But I think that company now is being investigated under FTC for other reasons. But for other reasons, I think. But they were not allowed to do. So yeah, absolutely, it will be. It's being implemented in a bunch of. There's some Latin American countries that are experimenting with the robot judges, low-level cases and things like that, where essentially AI processes hearings and information and then comes up with a recommendation. So. But yeah, absolutely, that's true. Litigation as well. So we can talk more.
Awesome. Thank you very much for this, for putting the context. Vitaliy, what can you tell me about a more practical side? Because I know that one part of your business is also related to contracts, I believe. So what is your perspective
on that? Sure, my previous business, we built almost fully autonomous robots, which can operate with no human assistance internal. Probably it's, I don't know, it's probably not a secret, but most advanced Yeah. But most of all companies in my field, they actually are trying to develop AI solution to replace lawyers in most of our fields. So this is the ultimate goal. So of course, now there are some cases where just empower people, but the ultimate goal for let's say like normal Silicon Valley startup actually to replace professionals from most of our fields. And this is pretty clear because since you do this, you can empower a lot of companies.
How long do we have?
But of course, I do understand. And actually, when I was younger, I actually choose between career to be software engineer or a lawyer. So I spent a lot of time to think and to actually become a lawyer. So I kind of a little bit familiar with this. Now, what's happening now? Because for example, in the United States, you cannot because this company, for example, now in trouble because they're trying to provide services to normal people. But we, for example, working with several big law firms, and we provide this our solution. And from what I see from competitor, we provide a lot of interesting AI solutions, which actually make them more competitive in terms of costs because they can use these tools to. I don't want to say replace junior people or replace middle people.
Paralegal, yes.
But paralegal,
for researching contracts.
I'm not sure if my micro is working, so I can just.
Is it on?
No, it's not working.
Well,
Do
do
you
you want to make sure it's on?
Yeah, but
I think it's just.
if you can hear me, it's fine. So I can just be loud.
Yeah, this mic is always a problem.
Should I check like this?
Like this, my way.
Okay.
So he could approach as well. I'm sorry, Vitaliy, go ahead.
So we for example have several projects with law firms, and we have several projects with governments where we trying to replace a lot of like people from just routine work. For example, documents review, redlining of agreements, etc. Of course, there is still human in the loop. We can return back to this question later. But actually, there are a lot of interesting happening in this field. And in general, I see what law firms, consulting companies, they now understood what they need to be competitive in cost long term. So AI component becoming like one of the competitive advantages to them. And they now understood what if they will not have AI inside, then they will be not competitive in terms of cost long term. Something positive what I see, sorry for this not very optimistic start. I'm from Eastern Europe, so sorry. It's like normal. So for example, one of our projects is we are breaking with non-profits which analyze legislation for corruption. And they have a lot of people like junior lawyers, mid lawyers do analysis of these agreements. And from what I see, with help of AI, they can escape this routine work. So they don't need anymore to spend like tens of hours just analyzing some very basic, something basic. So they can focus their time to analyze agreement on more like high level, which actually help them to discover some more interesting problems, let's say, in this legislation. So there are some advantages and disadvantages of this solution, but my point was first, it's happening, it's reality, and big companies actually starting to compete and will compete in the future within AI because it's one of the key part of their businesses which make them competitive long term.
Maybe I can
Sure.
just jump on that. So let me make a couple of very quick general points, and then I want to talk a little bit about the skill set of lawyers in the future, because I think that's what Vitaliy you're trying to really highlight here. So the first point is, even though AI appears to be doing all the tasks somewhat well for now, but it will get better, and it will get better at doing tasks that we assign it to do. Just remember, it does not have any conceptual understanding of what it's doing. Like it's just purely computational, purely probability assessments of what word should come next based on billions of text online. So it's not like actually have somebody on the other side understanding anything. It's just producing computational output. And sometimes you see when you ask ChatGPT for any of these, there's like a little circle that appears that they're writing or thinking, right?
Yes.
Actually, it's not. It just gives you the false impression that there is a thinking. There's no thinking there. There's just so that's the first point. Just remember that because sometimes it will come across as something so profound and powerful, but actually there's really nothing behind it other than just probability assessment of words and auto filling. The other point is about it's very hard to predict AI in general in the world, but also in the legal profession. And the reason is, and if you hear any predictions about AI with any kind of certainty, be very cautious because there are too many unknowns with AI. There are too many unknowns and there's no history. So there's no pattern, right? This is just for the first time we're doing this kind of stuff. So we have no idea how good it's going to get, how fast. It could be very profound and fast. It could be slow and kind of peter out potentially. Those are kind of two extremes. We have no idea because really there's just, it's already kind of consumed all the data online, like really like running out of data. Now we have to go to the proprietary data, which is not publicly available. So, and again, we said the energy consumption is so enormous for them to make the leap to the next.
But you're making a very interesting point, and that's one of my questions as well. So, I don't understand why all of a sudden such an acceleration. It's been there for so many years. And also, how do you foresee like the next 2 or 5 years? Because all of a sudden, I know you just said no, impossible, but all of a sudden, it's the talk of in town, and nobody knows what is it.
There are several. It's true. AI has been around for decades.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, Alan Turing. This was in the 50s, 60s. I think the difference now is both the data. Obviously, so much more. I think because of everything we do every single day, millions of points of data just is out there available.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. And the other thing is the computational power. So this is, but that doesn't mean again that we don't know like where's the barrier, right? Not everything, but we think that most of the things in this world kind of they reach some limit at some point. We don't know where that is going to be with AI.
I think that Vitaliy disagrees.
But can I just say about the legal profession because I want to mention pick up on something very important Vitaliy said. So, and this is especially for younger lawyers, but in general for us as legal professionals, I think there'll be two main impacts on the skill set of lawyers, or I guess we should say legal profession in general. One is on the substantive legal skills of lawyers. The second one is the delivery of legal services. Those are two different things, right? So what do we do as lawyers from a substantive standpoint, and how do we deliver legal services?
Strategy. You're talking about the strategy or the thinking, what I cannot do.
Well, it's not just that, but like what is the product you deliver, right? Because we are not just writing memos, we're writing memos for clients. So we do have to deliver a legal service to somebody. It's not like unless you're in academia, that's different. But so when I say model of delivery of legal service, how do you actually get there? And what is the model in which you do it? So let's just talk a little bit about the substantive legal skills. So I think two things will happen simultaneously or are happening. One is we have to be more technically savvy. There is no doubt about that. It's just we as lawyers, but not technically savvy in terms of I'm going to restart my computer. Like I'm talking about understanding like how AI actually works. How do you train it? What is the data parameters that needs to be used? How do you interpret an output from AI? Even now we call prompt engineering, although I'm not quite sure if that's really a skill, but things like that we do need to get better at. But at the same time, I think in addition to that, there will be even a more important emphasis placed on traditional non-technical skills because AI is limited there, like strategic thinking, like context, not good context, historical, social context, like stakeholder analysis. These are things that we as humans still have competitive advantage, if you will.
We'll come back to this question because it's part of my questions. Vitaliy, do you have any
rebuttal? So, from my experience, good lawyers, which I deal with before or dealing now, are very good in context understanding. So once you understand the context, you can actually create draft a good agreement, etc. Of course, ChatGPT cannot do this for now, but in the future, I believe it will be much more capabilities for such tools to understand the context, because now, for example, Google released recently a tool called NotebookML, something like that. You can upload all your data, like all your company data inside of this tool, and actually this is context understanding. So this is how AI will understand context. It's much better maybe than just a single person, because it's too much data for this. For example, now we're working with a construction company in France, like one of the largest construction companies in France, and we're helping them to create a solution which analyze legal context of projects, like construction projects, and draft and help their lawyers to draft, for example, answer on claims. So you have a claim from your contractor, and our tool can analyze all data from the project, not only like legal data, but physical data, professional data.
But like patterns, only patterns, not really thinking, not the strategic.
No, of course, it's a patterns, yeah. Of course, it's kind of mechanical thinking, so it's not like, it's not strategic level, but even this technical analysis actually allow people there to cover a lot of cases. So they found that they can cover with this a lot of cases, and they have much more human power, human time to actually invest this in this strategic level. So their lawyers have more time to analyze these deals on a high level, let's say. But of course, like Silicon Valley and our startup in this field, they actually want to, of course, from this technical level, go to strategic level. So to become your co-pilot, let's say, not to become just your technical tool. But for now, we have barriers like regulation. You need to be certified and such.
Don't look at us. No.
By some reason, yeah, we have this just by some reason.
It's on the topics today. Don't worry.
Yeah. Again, business motivation here actually to develop like ultimate solutions, and the question of society and question of professional circle, how to regulate, how to deal with it. So,
do you have like a projection, 5 years? Do you feel like it's going to be like the industrial revolution all of a sudden? Cheap. We're going to be chipped, like you said, at the last.
I don't like to be like prohibit something like to foresee the future, but definitely services will become much better, and AI will exceed your expectations. Exactly. So something what you have now is just the beginning, because it will start to integrate with real systems. So, for example, for now, you don't have so many companies who are dealing with AI companies who are already working with enterprise data inside of big corporations. But in 1 year, in 2 years, it will be much more companies who train their models, who train their data on a private information, not on just public information. Yeah, so public data now is kind of commodity, but private data, like data inside of law firms, data inside of enterprises, it's still not kind of accessible to everybody. But there are companies who are actually using this data in training their services and models. And these models kind of much more professional in a specific domain. So once you have access to a specific domain of knowledge, you can deliver much better services. So answering your question, why like now I'm in AI for whatever, like 20 years. Yeah, so I started my first company in 2010 in computer vision, in machine learning. By the time, barriers to deliver some solution were like very high. You need to invest like millions, tens of $1 millions to deliver like just very basic solution. Now you don't need to invest tens of millions. You need to invest just hundreds of thousands or like up to million, and you can deliver some solution. So now everybody can. I mean, not everybody, but a lot of companies can do this, and you have actually very good success cases. So investors and companies able to invest in this. So we have kind of, I don't know how to bifurcation point when like everybody can do this, and people just trying to use this technology to solve our problems. So my point is we just in the beginning, because in 2 years, in 3 years, more we will see more applications, and this application will be trained on much different data, and they will actually create more data once they will start work.
Yes, because in law, in the legal profession, confidentiality is very important. That's the reason why we have like internal models, or closed source models, we call that, and for this reason. So I believe that every company or law firm, as you mentioned, will go there and not outsource it for that reason.
It's expensive, because if you're going to create synthetic data or anonymize your data and then train, and then so that is it's still expensive. But going back to the delivery of legal services, if you have a good upfront investment, then you can get it through the.
So that's my.
But then we change also the billing model, right? Because but now we are providing for the most part hourly basis, right? And that doesn't really take into account this model of provision of legal services, where you've invested upfront in a tool that then is helping you provide.
That's an interesting point. How do you think it's going to affect the legal services? The cost, it's going to decrease.
It will definitely decrease it if the investments are made well. At the same, which is
good of the initial investment that is high. At long term,
I mean,
as you mentioned,
economies of scale. If you can. So what I was going to say is that until now we've kind of, as lawyers, providing legal services on a one-to-one basis. Right now, it's going to be a sort of product, or you make it a product rather than a service. If essentially you are providing a service one-to-many, right? So if I have a tool, then that tool is providing services to various clients. Then how do I bill for that? I think it will have to be a combination of some kind of outcome-based billing, because. But it will be. I think it generally should be good for access to justice and to legal services. Hopefully, at the same time, it will make maybe lawyers cheaper. So that's an impact.
That could be a good point.
It would be a good point.
So this is my next question. You covered all the question already. Like set.
Don't worry, this is the beginning.
But we can go more deeply inside. And did I mention how proud I am of this very exclusively Eastern European panel tonight? AI and the future of the profession. I was recently at the FinTech Week and learned from a person from LinkedIn that based on the analysis of data, only 1.2% of all the people on LinkedIn have AI skills. And so she said people, you need to have these AI skills. You need to add something. It's like, so how do we prepare? How do we think we prepare? Except for joining the Washington Foreign Law Society for an interesting conversation, self-learning, and acknowledging. How do we prepare?
Well, it's a good question. I think, we touched on some of these things. We shouldn't forget that we do have all these other traditional skills that we shouldn't forget, right? It's not just about technical expertise. So when people say AI skills, I'm not quite sure what that means, because familiarity with AI, of course, is important. We all should have it. We should try to use AI to the extent it's possible. But the way to do it really is experiment, right? But experiment in a responsible fashion, and do not forget also. I mean, most of the audience is lawyers, right?
Yes.
We do have also very specific professional duties as lawyers that we should not forget. This is a big topic now that's being talked about in our associations, like duty to supervise, right? So the human oversight element that you talked about, duty of expertise, right? Because we do need to actually use the technology if it's there. Duty to communicate. You have to disclose to clients. In fact, nowadays, a lot of courts require you to disclose to them if you are providing any kind of pleadings to briefs using AI. You have to specify. That's the court rules. Almost all the courts across North America and Europe as well, starting to create these procedural rules. If you're ethical, yeah, if you're submitting a brief, and that happened because of all these cases, the Bianca and all that,
The fake, yeah.
the fake, you have got to disclose it. You have got to verify it. So we have to experiment with everything in a responsible way. See what the limitations are, and there are limitations. There are AI. Yes, it's a prospective technology. It's not quite there yet. So let's be aware of its limitations, not over rely on it. Like for example, I think the legal profession is not AI in the legal profession has not matured yet, for sure. I mean, there is just it will maybe at some point. Maybe for lower level tasks, it is good that are less important, less impactful, like writing emails or doing diligence. It could be okay. And by the way, this is something that I've been thinking a lot about in terms of the skills for students, for example, the people who are starting in the legal profession now. What worries me a little bit is when we started practicing law some time ago, and we went through the law firms. It's true we did the mundane tasks, and it was painful. It was quite painful. I mean, you're doing diligence in the middle of the night in some companies somewhere in Eastern Europe, and then you're reading these contracts, and you're like, who signed these contracts? Is there a change of control clause? And doing all this, and it's true. It was very painful. It was very mundane, but you develop sort of foundational skills. You get the intuition, you develop a legal sense of, because that will help you later when you're actually drafting a contract for a client, we're actually drafting the M&A agreement. Oh yeah, that reminds me of all the things that I did when I was a junior. If you take out these skills now and these tasks, right? If junior lawyers are not doing these and AI is doing it, what's going to happen to these junior lawyers, right? How are they going to develop these skills? I don't see it. Because if we have already a mature kind of lawyer, with experience, and you can focus on strategy and you can focus on the big things, right? As you said, AI is freeing up space for new things. If you're a mature, seasoned lawyer, great. That's great. But if you're starting now, you're not there yet. How are you going to get there if you're not doing the basic things that a lawyer used to do?
I get it. You want them to suffer.
I mean, sometimes you suffer, but suffering is the way you gain skills. There's no pain, no gain, right?
No, exactly. Vitaliy, if you were wearing your lawyer's hat, what would you do today to understand AI and to use it in the legal profession? How can we be up to date?
First of all, I'm involved in several initiatives as far as some professional, let's say, teachers or some other professionals. They started to learn about how to use ChatGPT and some other tools. And this actually initiatives that was tremendously successful. So actually, a lot of people want to learn, like let's say teachers or some other professionals. They want to learn how to do this. So it's a lot of interest actually from people. So people really, because of different reasons, but they're really interested into how to get this skill. Because looks like for most of our people, it's clear what it's like. I don't know, 35 years ago, it's a skill to work with your PC. If you don't know how to work with PC, you'll be not competitive in the future. So now you need to be familiar how to use these tools during your work. For example, in my company, I have a rule for myself. Like before I will speak with any colleague in my company, I have to speak with ChatGPT first. And I have the same rule for all employees. Like before they speak with me, they have to speak with ChatGPT. Because I don't want to work for this ChatGPT to them. Like I'm not their ChatGPT. So if they can ask and get answers from ChatGPT, why have to spend my time?
Oh, okay.
No, and it's actually this is actually happening in a lot of companies now.
But what about the confidentiality again? I mean, we can, yeah. I mean, it's on the rules of law.
Actually, that's something that is being widely used, including by lawyers for all kinds of professionals. That is client intake. Generative AI is good at that, and provided that you have the confidentiality, because
it's really not. So anything that's really material and impactful and requires precision, not there yet. Anything that's a little bit less important, like taking down details, right, and things like that, that could be used. But I think what's going to have to happen is for a lot, and this is where the expense is going to increase. You're going to have to take that from the cloud or your data and kind of adapt OpenAI, whatever solutions are there, and adapt it to your own data. So, and then you can try to have that, retrieval, what do they call it? Retrieval augmented generate where everything is sourced, right? So it's like Wikipedia, right? It sort of tells you so you can verify it. The problem is that it takes time to do that. It takes time. Like, to be honest, we're trying to do that some of the stuff at the World Bank. It's like not quite there yet. Like some of the documents are missing, and so it requires an investment. And it requires also retraining of lawyers, right? I mean, the new generation of lawyers, on the one hand, they have the challenge that I described. On the other hand, they don't have baggage. We have kind of a diversity to technology. So I'm looking at that because she's representing the law schools. I don't know why. So that's one thing that we're gonna have to, as lawyers, gonna have to overcome. Of course, is our we're so used to doing the things, we're kind of conservative by nature, which everybody knows. But so try, experiment, get out of your comfort zone, and I mean, there's all kinds of trainings, like, I don't know, Bloomberg Law has all kinds of things online, what they do. So just get more comfortable with, but yeah, be aware of it. We have all of these obligations of confidentiality, and conflict of interest. That is an area that we haven't even touched on. Like if you have like OpenAI, two parties to a action using the same AI provider. What's happening with the conflict of interest? What's happening with the data? So it's just a mess at this point. There's just too many questions, too few answers. People are not quite there yet in terms of understanding it, but this is why we're trying to do these things.
And the best motivation to use OpenAI actually comes in case of lawyers when you charging your client, for example, $20K, but you spend just 1 hour providing these services, and the rest you just delegate it to OpenAI. So instead of spending like 100 hours before.
That will have to change. That won't work. No.
Yeah.
No.
But now it's motivated a lot of people to do this action.
Yeah.
So let's go into the challenges of AI, and you already mentioned about these cases like fake AI, hallucinating AI with fake court precedents, the chatbot of Air Canada giving wrong information, and there are many cases now that where AI is providing a false response or incorrect or things. So how do we prevent this?
Well, one of the principles that is most relevant for lawyers when it comes to this is the principle of human oversight. It's just and this, of course, is a challenge, because if you're going to have human oversight for every output, then what's the point of using it in the first place? You're going to have to verify everything. So I think that's really the tension is we're going to have human oversight for the outputs. But at the same time, we can't be checking everything, because then it defeats the purpose of using it. So I think, well, look, I mean, models will get better. Are they going to be error-free for sure? I don't think so. Unless you have 100% or at least close to 100% accuracy rate, which is we're not anywhere near that. It's kind of hard. But look, they're using AI for large data sets reviews, even now, which I think makes sense, because even if you have just lawyers doing it, no lawyer will ever look at every single document. Let's say FCPA kind of white collar investigation where you're doing, millions and millions of documents, communications, emails between companies. But that's just one challenge, right? And the other thing is AI is changing. I mean, there's a big topic about antitrust, right? I don't know if we should get in that, because it's a very Maybe you can give us more.
I was about to ask a specific question in terms of algorithmic pricing and antitrust.
Yeah, exactly. That's. I mean, there's just too many challenges to enumerate. Like, there's a new investigation. I think the Department of Justice started an investigation against a company here that using AI to set rents. Essentially, this is a using mechanism. They're getting data from all the landlords, corporate landlords. We're talking about corporate landlord data from that and proprietary data, and then they're setting the rent based on the input from the. So they're essentially
price target pricing, or how do they call that? Yeah,
this is a little bit different. But you're talking about exactly that's right. So the other thing, AI is providing like a granular. It's really getting into the granularity of everything, right? Because the data is so much. For example, it's setting actual hourly rates for workers. I mean, people doing the same job, but they're monitored so closely, sort of working the same job, but they monitor productivity and how much. So their hourly rate is set by AI algorithms, let's say on a periodic basis. And so everybody gets they set schedules. And so it has huge impacts on that. It's just too many challenges to.
Yes. My question was a bit wide.
The way how I look on this, like there are no challenges, just opportunities. So believe me or not, like, but when once you see any challenge in this field, like in 2 years, in 3 years, it will become an opportunity. Of course. So about like barriers or some blockers, yeah. So we can. When you're trying to introduce any AI solution into organization, usually there are a lot of resistance to this because, especially AI, because like 5 years ago, when you develop some computer vision, machine learning, some solution, nobody cares because it wasn't just technical stuff, this is technical thing. Now, when you are introducing some solution which change something on the level of management, or it's actually changed balances inside of organization, in power balances. There are some people who kind of have a specific position in organization because before that they was in charge of something.
Oh, I see.
And when you actually show to a lot of other people what you can explain what's before just using Gen AI, like let's say use Gen AI, yeah. So or you formalize this process, or you explain what they did before, and you can actually show what they did. It's actually change again a lot of power. This change power balance in the organization. You need to be careful with this technology because there are not just now technical tools in that organization. Now it's related to politics.
More political.
More political, yes. But what I want to tell, so because I was involved for last 7-8 years in this AI policy making in European Union, which know of bureaucracy, etc., compared to the United States. So probably 3 years ago or 4 years ago, like general view was, okay, we will regulate AI, or we will make it safe through regulation, etc. But 3 years ago, I saw a turnover in this vision, especially in the United States, because they faced a competition against China. And they understood okay, you can compete in regulations with China. I mean, I'm talking about like societies. You like American society, for example, can compete with Chinese in terms of regulation. But if Chinese will develop much better AI, then this society could be not competitive long term. So in any case, you need to compete in technologies, not within regulations. So regulations in this case should serve development of society, not block development of society.
That's the perfect,
same for the company.
It's the perfect segue for the next question, which is how to prevent, challenges and all the problems it might, and in the same time remain competitive. How do we?
So I will have to disagree a little bit with my learned friend here, which is what the purpose of this whole. To be provocative. But it's to me, actually, it's a false dichotomy, and it's always been a false dichotomy between regulation and innovation. To be honest with you, I've heard that story, that talking point so many times on so many industries. There's no problem with innovation in a lot of industries that are heavily regulated. The fact that the European Union is not as competitive in AI as China and the US is not a function of their regulation. It's really not. It's just it's legal traditions and ecosystems and economic system. I mean, it's not really, to me, I don't think there's a causation there at all. And maybe there's correlation, but I don't think that. I think that, in fact, if you really want to innovate and have an innovative and competitive ecosystem, you're going to have to regulate antitrust, because right now we're in a situation where essentially this is a very powerful technology that essentially is sitting in like a couple of hands, right? I mean, it's just a couple of companies have the tools to do that, have the data, have the money, you cannot reach these people. They're so concentrated there. So if you really want to innovate, you're going to have to create competition. And to create competition, you're going to have to regulate these people. And that's my...
protect the consumers. I mean, not only the business and not only the competitivity. But
I mean, in California example, what happened in California just a couple of months ago is a perfect example. It was just a law that tried to really very high level, only the very large developers try to regulate catastrophic risk. Like if you develop an AI that leads to mass casualties or like billions of dollars of damage and you could have prevented it reasonably, you're going to be liable. They killed it. They just killed it. They said, oh yeah, well, it's going to prevent innovation. How is that going to prevent innovation? You're going to have to do these things anyway. Do we want innovation that leads to mass casualty? I don't think so. But that's the story. Now, of course, yeah, every time you regulate, that requires some compliance cost, of course. So we're going to have to do smart regulation, which is not quite clear what it means in the AI field at this point, because there is definitely regulatory overreach. There is potential for that because we don't know exactly what the technology is capable of. So we either overreach and overregulate, or we are kind of standing too passively, and it's very hard to find the balance. Because the use cases, so the EU Act is trying to do something kind of square peg in a round hole. It's like trying to regulate the use cases on the one hand, but these use cases will change. They're not static. So right now you have like 5 or 10 enumerated use cases that are prohibited. There's going to be 100 of those.
That's another challenge.
It's another challenge. So if you do it too early, if you do it too strictly, you're also not helping yourself, because it's not so much that you're preventing innovation, but you are actually not regulating properly because you have put in use cases there that are already old. So they try to have this at the very end. They added this stuff about the foundation models and in general, how all these foundational models that can be general purpose use for anything, and they just have some requirements of them that are, I think, are generally reasonable. I mean, testing and evaluating and all these things. But so anyway, that was my general point.
I can feel that Vitaliy has something to add. Because you were involved in the EU Act regulation in the building, so
long. I don't know from what to start. So I have two relevant experience. So first of all, I created the AI committee in Ukraine as the main advisory body in artificial intelligence, and we created like first regulation documents, like strategy of the country, etc. So I'm kind of was involved in this process by myself. I even drafted this agreement. So it's not like I'm just overseeing. I was one of the co-authors who like during the night drafting this regulation. So the problem here is what I can agree with you. What now most of our regulators are actually trying to regulate something what expired, or like something not relevant. I believe this is the main problem. One of the reasons why this happened is because in all these bodies, there are still majority of lawyers, not engineers.
That's the problem.
I have a solution.
So 2 years ago, I ordered a research about, so we analyzed like top policymakers in 7 countries in United States, European Union in general, United Kingdom, Russia, China, something else, so like, let's say 7 countries. So we analyzed the backgrounds of top 100 policymakers in all these countries. So what our research showed to us, and it's public, so I make it public, so I control some people in European Union. So in China and Russia, 50% of people who involved in like actively policy making are they like 50% of people have engineering background. The rest, I mean, 50% like law, international relations, and like this domain. In the United States, as I remember, like 35% of people among these 100 policymakers have engineering background. In the EU, 8. 8%.
Okay, we can't do anything against statistics.
The thing is, the issue there is there's not enough engineers in general.
Not too many lawyers, not enough.
Just too many lawyers.
So this is kind of
Reflective of society.
and you see like everybody blaming regulation in European Union, and this is probably one of the reasons, because they're just the people who know how to regulate, they are very good in regulation, but there are some other aspects of this. So you need it. And so we
actually that really when I wrote the book, I dedicated I think a chapter on like what are the people that should do the regulation. Lawyers, part of it, of course, no doubt. Lawyers understand the law and how legislation is drafted, but you gotta have, and this has to be completely multidisciplinary to work. So you're gonna have the engineers, the computer scientists. You're gonna have social scientists. Sorry, we're gonna have the humanities as well represented, because it's really impactful. You're gonna have anthropologists, poets, I don't know, whatever. Like all these things that actually, because it's really like this technology is not just, we talk about skills and how we use it and tasks, but actually it's kind of challenging us as humans, right? Like in terms of what is the role that we have? Like there are all these things that we used to do without any tools. Now with these tools, we're outsourcing everything to them. And what is that for us to do? What exactly is the human element of everything? If we outsource everything, we spend so much of our lives working. If we outsource most of our work, then what are we going to do? Like, are we going to all become prompt engineers? That's really not a very particularly fascinating future. Like, you will learn how to ask the ChatGPT in a perfect way, so you get the. So we have to think about. So regulation, I agree with you. Regulation has to be, when you over lawyer without understanding technology, you are really shooting yourself in the foot. But you know what? All these countries regulate. China heavily regulates AI too. Yeah. It's not. And it depends on how you regulate it, how targeted you are, how prospective regulation is. You have to regulate with the idea of the next 5 years, and not like the EU with the last 5 years. Sorry.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
So you both agree. Let's leave it there.
Let's leave it there. Yes.
I have one last question about data protection, but it's maybe too big of a topic. How do we do in terms of data protection?
That is a very good question, Alexander. So, there's a lot of aspects to it, but to me, maybe the two most, I would say probably the most important aspect is, so protection of data, technically, there are all kinds of ways you can do it, but what AI has done is expanded the scope of what we would consider data, right? So until now, what is data? Oh, your name, your social security, but now with AI, there are things that become data that were not data before, like inferences. So this is the big topic, inferences, right? That AI is inferencing things about you, your personal traits, your personal views, just based on your Google searches and the YouTube channel, whatever you're watching. So now your feed profile, AI is so micro-targeted profiling and so good at it that it can essentially infer things about you, and that becomes data, essentially public data, that no one would have known before, right? Because most of our digital behavior is digital nowadays. So you're going to know all of that. So how does the law react to that? There are theories out there that, there's like new rights, the right to reasonable inferences, the right to an explanation, right to challenge an inference made by AI. Like if you, let's say you go to an interview, right, an employment interview, and then AI has profiled you there for that, and they've used AI for that. In fact, in New York, I think recently passed something about that. They use AI to profile you for employment purposes. Can you challenge that? I mean, maybe that inference was wrong, or maybe it's too private. So this is what on the technical side, there's a lot of issues, but this is what really I see as a distinctive feature, because data now is so expanded to include all of the things that we do. It's not just the basic stuff, but so personal traits, like what are your even opinions on things in the world? How do we protect that? Do not put any personal information in OpenAI. They have in their contract, in the terms and conditions, that whatever you put in is going to be used for training data. So do not do that. And they could spit it out as well. So everything you put in there has to be non-confidential. Otherwise, it becomes part of the cycle, the data cycle. So that's just, yeah.
Thank you very much, Vitaliy.
So next week, for example, I was speaking in Austria, and when I asked them, "Hey, can you share my talk publicly?" They told me no, because it's privacy. So I was very surprised with so strict regulation in the European Union about privacy. But back to question about general, my view is what. Maybe it's another provocation, but it's okay. But 85, like my view, 85% of companies, like if we will compare, if we took like all companies in the world, or we will took like competitors, like competitive companies who are competitors to each other, I believe 85 or 95% of data what they have inside are not unique. It's like similar data, or data about, for example, again, I can speak about myself, like my day, like information about my daily routine is not unique. I mean, I wake up at 7 o'clock, I have a coffee at 8 o'clock. So if you like try to understand like your daily routine, or like most information what you produce during the day, you will probably understand like most of how people do the same. So like, let's say 75% of information what we produce during the day, it's not actually super unique. It's just kind of similar to other people. And maybe just, I don't know, 10% or 20% of information which we produce or deal with, it's unique. So I believe this concept about this total privacy, etc., should be rethink with respect of new use cases and how society will use in the future all these AI tools, because now it looks like legacy. And this legacy, unfortunately, was developed for the last year, because, and I remember myself 20 years ago when I wanted to start like some new company, like a IT company. For me, it looked like, I don't know, I paid for agreements, for user agreements, I don't know, $1,000. Now, every time when I need to start another startup, let's say for, I don't know, $1 million of investments, I need to spend $200,000 for regulation agreements, user agreements, etc. For me, it looks like barriers. I'm talking about business. Mm-hmm. For me, it looks like additional tax. And we need to understand like why we're paying this tax for, and how this affect our society at scale. Because if we will have outdated, because legislation or regulation is not like something which comes from the God, for example. It's something would describe our current.
Exactly. It needs to be in correlation.
Yeah, it should be correlated. So it's not like given. It should be discussed. I believe it could be a time that we need to discuss, have a serious discussion about this, and maybe to deregulate a lot of this thing. Because again, for now, it could be, and you can see this in case of European Union, in a lot of bright people who want to start AI company in European Union, they escape into the United States. They go into Dubai. They're going outside of this over-regulated area because they cannot just deal with this. Because publicly it sounds good, ethics, human rights, privacy, etc. So, and we all, and we need it's just normal for all of us to have this, yes, but there are a lot of technical regulations which not correlate with human rights, which not correlate with privacy, which just create barriers. So we need to have a serious
We need a
discussion.
balance.
Yes,
Between the protection of consumers' rights and
balance, and we need to stay competitive to China, to other like North Korea, to other countries who actually have more different structure of society, and in some future they can become more advanced. And in this case, this overregulation could be a huge problem for the society.
I hear
If you have smart regulation
Yeah.
versus, I think if you have smart regulation, that's not going to inhibit competition and innovation. But yeah, if it's not smart, but I think the European Union issues are not really coming from the regulation. It's economic, it's history, it's ecosystem.
Sure.
So they just don't produce enough engineers. If they did, maybe they would have better regulation. But
to add to that, the EU is producing more engineers than the US.
Yeah, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. The US is producing very few, so that's probably
exactly. Here, people are like, what was it? Less than 13%. In European Union, we are talking about 18.
18, but still pretty low.
Yeah, but still 5% is a big number.
Yeah, that's the perfect segue again for the questions. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. Karen?
Yeah, I think it was my World Bank Group colleague here who said there are too many questions, and I also have too many questions, but I'll stick to one. To bring us back to the impact on the legal profession is actually something I've been thinking a lot about, and you both sort of spoke about how this will impact young lawyers, right? And while I think that is an issue right now, I've been wondering, but if it impacts young lawyers in the long term, that's going to impact the legal profession, right? And so one thing is sort of young lawyers kind of, there being fewer jobs for young lawyers, but I'm wondering when young lawyers don't learn those critical skills, right? Like one thing is having a senior lawyer overseeing a process that was previously done by clerks or young lawyers, now overseeing a process done by AI, but who's then going to take over from that senior lawyer? So I don't know if you have any thoughts on how this will impact the legal profession 10 or 20 years down the line. I know this is changing very slowly, so I know that's an easy question to answer, but
that's exactly what I was saying. And that is one of the things that worry me the most is how do we develop the foundational skills within, sometimes you do have to go through the pain of, like low-level diligence tasks that teach you kind of intuitively and organically. Now, supervising. And also that makes me think about separate issues. If you're supervising a team of junior lawyers, you also develop your managerials. But if you're supervising a bunch of AIs or AI systems, that's a very different skill, obviously, right? In some respects, it's probably a lot easier. But at the same time, are we all going to be managing AI in the future? We have to interact even at work.
Completely antisocial.
Completely antisocial, yeah, exactly. So
developing.
But the thing is, I'm not quite sure we think about these things. Right? This is just, again, I'm sorry we talk about innovation and let's go full speed and then let's innovate. Fine, I totally with you on that. If something can be done better with that, actually, we should be using it because it makes sense. We have to be efficient also for our clients. But at the same time, we don't really think about the impact, the larger impact of these things. And everything is in motion and we're trying to adjust, but everything is, we're kind of behind. So this has to be really, this has to be a big topic in law schools. Like, what are the skills that these students will have to adapt to, and how are they going to acquire these skills?
And to sort of follow up, not right. One thing is sort of innovating, but if we innovate the legal profession away, we risk getting to a place where there's nobody to resolve those issues that come up, right? And so I think it's
exactly. So that's why I was saying the skills that are going to be the more important is judgment, right? Things that are traditional legal skills that have kind of maybe we've forgotten over the years. So they will become more important: judgment, ethics, strategy, thinking a little like a trusted counselor, right? Those are the skills, because AI is going to give you input, some sort of output, some output. It will make a recommendation about something, but not every time that recommendation is going to work. So one of the areas where we see, and I think there's a need for most regulation, is AI being used in decision making, right? And public sector, including the public sectors, right? I mean, until now, it's most of the private sector. You know, we have insurance companies setting premium using AI. Employment, as we said, we have credit worthiness assessments, loan applications. So there's a lot of bias and discrimination issues there. But you know, now it's you're using it for welfare benefits, for example. I think even just I was just reading the other day, like I think one of the states here is going to essentially outsource who gets employment benefits to an algorithm. So yeah, they say, well, you know, it's like GDPR says you should not be relying solely on automated decision making, but you know how it is. Like humans are going to get the output. Well, okay, the AI can be wrong. You know, probably if I do an assessment, it will be. Yeah. So there'll be over reliance issues. So yeah, who's going to be making the judgment? How do we even teach that? Right? Do we need to have separate law school courses on ethics and judgment but can you even teach that in school? I'm not sure. You have to kind of develop that through practice and through cases that come to you. So very difficult. Yeah, it worries me, and I'm not sure anybody really knows how to solve it. That's probably what worries me most. There's not enough discussion about it. Thank you. Yeah.
Give you another perspective from another profession. So let's say 25 years ago, most of our software engineers, they were familiar with how actually to program hardware, like on a low level. So they were familiar with some low-level languages, how to make like something very, very low level. I believe now 95% of software engineers have no idea and have no skills how to program hardware on a low level. So they kind of act on a more abstract level. They dealing with more abstract concepts, and they never going on this hardware level. So because they just mindset totally different. Maybe this will happen with lawyers. So maybe even to be like lawyer of the future, you don't need to know about this experience through pain when you're motivated to read all these agreements. Maybe it will be just more social skills. And maybe you have to deal, maybe your brain will be trained on more abstract entities, let's say, not on this where it's deal in details. I agree with you, but like usually you need to have the skill. But I'm talking about software engineers when you're programming, I don't know, airplane, and you need to be very precise in how you program an airplane. And 20 years ago, 25 years ago, you program hardware. Now these software engineers programming airplane or more abstract level, let's say.
I mean, but at the same time, you know, lawyers, we are a little different, right, from the software engineers. Like we need to write, we need to be able to draft. If we're not drafting, if junior lawyers are not drafting, they're just asking questions. If we're talking about prompt engineering drafting.
I believe we have another question here, and afterwards I would like us to go to the reception and just continue the conversation around. I believe you wanted to ask a question.
Thank you for this beautiful event, first of all. I had two brief questions. One for the legal profession's future, especially from the perspective of big law. Like in terms of the protection of the young lawyers, when Vitaliy said you had a 20-hour job and you can do it in 1 hour with AI. That's a nightmare for a big law firm because you actually bill based on billable hours. And right now I'm an LLM candidate, but I used to work at Baker McKenzie and I was part of the AI solutions team. And I was coding Python for the past 9 years, so I knew my stuff, but I still would never use AI in my legal practice, even though the firm had its own AI tools, because my performance was based on my billable hours. So I would never use it because if I would be more efficient, then I would be a really bad, junior associate. And so do you think that the big law firm's cash generation model would be need to change? Richard Susskind was mentioning that in his last book, like maybe more project-based jobs with more generation, then they will just eat themselves, each other, and there will be just a few firms that are really great at using AI. So this is my first question. The second one is, how do we regulate the dynamic markets in terms of the antitrust law? Especially when we look at the algorithmic collusion cases, you can easily monitor the same algorithmic structures used by different companies in the retail market. But when you look at the New York Stock Exchange, it's actually the world's largest market. It's quite dynamic, and everyone is actually using bots, but no one can actually regulate that. How should we regulate it? When the GDPR first arrived, people would say it's not general destruction. They would state it like general destruction of product roadmaps, not like the one. So how should we regulate the dynamic market in those terms?
Big questions. Do we have enough time?
No, I would invite you to wrap it up quickly so that we could finish the conversation with a glass of wine and tasty empanadas. But yes, please.
No, very briefly. I mean, the delivery of, as I was saying, delivery of legal services model will have to change. The AI landscape, law firms are not made for that landscape. That will definitely have to change. So you're going to have, who knows what's going to happen, but you're going to have companies that are not really law firms, but kind of AI law firms. So they will develop these solutions and then people will use them. Specialize, exactly. So, but the big law firms are probably going to be on the way out. I mean, yeah, for better or worse. I mean, maybe it's a good thing, but but it's just that model because it's all reliant on the sort of the pyramid, right? That's as you say. So if you remove the pyramid, then it becomes just the top. I mean, then your whole billable model is out the window. So it would be more outcome based, project based. And there will be specialized AI providers in the legal field, whether it's law firms or conglomerates of law firms or law firms and engineers, who knows? But it will be a very different landscape. I mean, on antitrust, it's a big topic. I'm personally not an antitrust lawyer, so I can't really give you a unique perspective, but there already are laws on the books. And this is what, the FTC has been very active on, the DOJ for the last few years, which has been, very commended because they are actually using the laws on the books a little bit with maybe some wider interpretations, but trying to go after this because it's very difficult to know exactly how to amend the law to address the issue. So you already have the laws that say there should be no collusion. So if the collusion is done with or without AI, it shouldn't matter, right? You just kind of have to use the existing law and then bolster it, but that's difficult because you don't know exactly. Again, the use cases are so many. So sometimes actually it's better not to change laws, just use the laws that we have on the books. Like I think the DOJ or somebody sued Facebook for fair housing under the Fair Housing Act because they had used algorithm to micro-target ads for houses, to out of minorities. So it's an old act. It's like, I don't know, 50 years old act, and they just used it for that. They didn't think at the time that it would be algorithmically used. So you can still do that, but it becomes more and more difficult, I think, to detect these things, right? Because these algorithms are somewhere out there in the cloud colluding. How do we know, right? Unless you actually detect. So that's where we need the engineers to do the investigation and help us.
Google recently shared news about 25% of source code that produce engineers inside of Google actually created by AI. Maybe it's not a correct statement, maybe let's say 10%, whatever. I mean, they publish, claim it 25%. I believe it's less, but let's say 25. Why law firms cannot do the same? I believe yes. So in the future, again, I believe we will see some law firms with just few partners and AI algorithms on the back end, and they will be very cost efficient comparing to competitors.
Thank you very much. So join me to thank our speaker. Little conversation there. I would like also to thank Holland and Knight that are hosting us tonight, and they are our regular sponsor. Very, very loyal friend of the Washington Foreign Law Society. And Momin, our office student officer who did all the prep work with the advertisement and everything.